Yes, Sir Hairless here. Today we have a patron request from Juliana. Thank you for this one. This is Jack's Lament, covered by Geoff Castellucci. This is the second song on our channel that is from the film The Nightmare Before Christmas. The first one was voice play with their Oogie Boogie song. At the time, I had not seen the film, but I have now seen the film in preparation for this quirky film. I really enjoyed it. Some good songs in there as well. This song, Jack's Lament, it's a very theatrical song. There's a fair bit of what I call speak singing, where it's quite tuneful but not quite singing, but also a bit too tuneful for speaking. But there is some really nice singing in there, also just some straight up talking. In short, it's one that I can definitely see Geoff doing. This will be our third reaction to one of Geoff's solo work, so if you want to catch up on the previous two, you can do so in the playlist up here or linked below. They were Wicked Game and I See Fire, probably quite different from this one. So without further ado, let's get straight into it.
There are few who deny at what I do I am the best, for my talents are renowned far and wide. When it comes to surprises in the moonlit night, I excel without ever even trying. With the slightest little effort of my ghost-like charms, I have seen grown men give out a shriek. With a wave of my hand and a well-placed moan, I have swept the very bravest off their feet. Yet year after year, it's the same routine, and I grow so weary of the sound of screams. And I, Jack, the Pumpkin King, have grown so tired of the same old thing.
Oh, this is, I think so far there's a lot to like about it. Before we get into the music, the set, I mean, hardly surprising, and the makeup, but it's really good, isn't it? A certain mind to be able to create such an aesthetic and an atmosphere in the probably a relatively small space, all things considered. Nice little touch with the pumpkins in the background, but the more kind of traditional pumpkin here for him, who is Jack, the Pumpkin King. And also I like how he's just sat at the piano. And because of the theatricalness of it, the theatre, he of course isn't necessarily playing, but we can assume it's him playing in the background. In my previous reactions, when I was asking about the instrumentation that we hear, I was told that he does it all in a keyboard, which is connected to music software, which can produce the sounds of the other instruments. So again, unless you tell me otherwise in the comments, I'm going to assume that's what is done here. All right. First pause, let's go over some of the things that we heard there. In terms of the arrangement, it's the same key as the original. If we listen to the opening of the original, we can hear it doesn't immediately come in like Geoff does. And that's just because in the original it's part of a film, part of a sequence, so the music leads into it naturally. Geoff's version, it's a little bit more eerie. That's just due to the higher piano parts, very, very tinkly sounding. In the background, we get a kind of sound and some creaking. Don't know what they are, only he will know what they are. But to me, they're the kind of eerie noises that you hear when you're a bit spooked, maybe walking home late at night or something, or as a kid if you thought there were ghosts in your house. I think I said in my previous reactions, I believe Geoff has an extreme attention to detail with just these little additions here and there, such as those noises. I think this would prove my past self right, maybe. Also contributing to the eerie sound is the fact that we just have the piano accompaniment. If we listen to the original song at this point, you can hear the strings descending chromatically, which Geoff has in the left hand. But there's also the opening melody that's sung. We can hear in the double reed woodwind sounding instruments like a bassoon. And then we hear all the other instruments coming in with this theme. Geoff's keeping it simple until he comes in. Again, nice little arpeggiated tinkles just for the atmosphere. We do hear some strings in the background. String effects, anyway.
There are few who deny at what I do I am the best, for my talents are
straight away down to that deep, deep growl. Most people watching him probably know who he is. If this is your first time seeing him, immediately you're now aware of his vocal capabilities in terms of range. In the original song, when the melody comes in, it is quite singing-y.
There are few who deny it. What I do, I am the best.
Geoff does do this quite well. Doesn't mimic it, but he replicates the notion. Because of that, again, we have instrumentation in the background playing the melody that, if this was sung, would be.
There are few who deny it. What I do, I am the best.
Geoff doesn't do that. We don't have this theme. We don't have that. Instead, he chooses for this chromatic falling chordal structure in the background. It emphasizes his melody a bit more, emphasizes the theatricalness of it. I need to figure out if there's a better word than theatricalness. Theatre? Can you say the theatre? And in the whole theatre of everything, you'll notice it with the more theatrical film scores that are out there. Within songs, it's much more natural to have a big contrast of sounds or ideas. So we've got this very calm, smooth idea, and then
Renowned far and wide.
with the pizzicato strings, the heavy lower piano compared to the higher tinkly piano we've had before.
Surprises in the moonlit night. I excel without ever even trying. With this
And in that bit we just heard, he's keeping it simpler, mostly piano dominated. The strings coming in just to add effect on the more jumpy bits, let's say.
with a wave of my hand and a well-placed moan.
He's very much sticking to the growly depths that it's just such a unique, cool sound. There is always the danger of doing this. I mean, it's all personal taste, but there's the danger that the sound can become quite monotonous. But again, because of the playfulness of the song and the singing and how he's moving up and down, all while staying really low, I think that's a really good skill and a difficult thing to do. Somehow making it fun whilst limiting yourself in terms of range.
I have swept the very bravest off their feet.
I did like that bit, especially how the piano accompaniment works both with his melody and in contrary motion. Also though, that particular phrase, it's the same idea from another musical, the film genre musical. Let me find it, see if you know what I might be talking about. A Certain Orphaned Child.
I'm reviewing that situation.
Recognize this one? Yeah.
Own a suite at Claridge's and run a fleet of carriages and wave at all the duchesses with friendliness as much as is
We can see that the playfulness, the singing.
befitting of my new estate. Good morrow to you, magistrate!
And then the bit that's very, very similar.
I think I better think it out again.
I have swept the very bravest off their feet.
If you don't know the other song, I'd really recommend going and listening to it. It's a 4 or 5 minute video on YouTube. Oliver, 1968, reviewing the situation. All right, back to Geoff and Jack's Lament. Then we get this bit.
Yet year after year, it's the same routine.
So deep.
I grow so weary of the sound of screams.
Year after year, it's the same routine, and I grow so weary. You know, he's talking about life being monotonous. And what did Geoff choose to do with the accompaniment? Well, he just stuck again to very simple piano. He didn't make it interesting.
Weary of the sound
We get some other instrumental sounds coming in towards the end of the phrase.
of the sound of screams.
In the original song, what did they choose to do here?
Yet year after year, it's the same routine.
Violin, often associated with sadness. They're choosing to come in at this point and kind of take the dominant role. To me, this is a great example of how you can treat some lyrics, talking about monotony in this case, differently. Geoff chooses to keep things the same. I think that is a good representation of the lyrics. The original does that, but by bringing in the violin line, I think it just adds a depth of sadness to it. Neither is right, neither is wrong. We will each have our preferences, but lyrical treatment is definitely something to think about when it comes to arranging songs. This also has an effect on the other bits of music. I always talk about musical phrasing and how context is so important. What comes next? Well, it's this bit.
And I, Jack, the Pumpkin King.
Nothing sounds too odd about that, does it? I think it's because the instrumentation has been fairly constant, same with Geoff's range and everything. In the original, this part really stands out to me. It's definitely my least favorite part of the song. That might change often with these songs. The more I listen to them, the more I enjoy certain parts.
And I, Jack, the Pumpkin King.
And that's because we have other instruments being heard that weren't heard in the previous phrase. Again, you might completely disagree with me on that, but in this case, it seems a bit more natural the way Geoff's done it. And just before we paused, I really enjoyed these little funky oohs.
Grown so tired of the same old thing.
Some nice chords in there. All right, let's carry on.
Oh, somewhere deep inside of these bones, an emptiness began to grow.
There's something out there far from my home, a longing that I've never known. I'm the master of fright and a demon of light, and I'll scare you right out of your pants. To a guy in Kentucky, I'm Mr. Unlucky, and I'm known throughout England and France. Come sure. And since I am dead, I can take off my head to recite Shakespearean quotations.
No animal nor man can scream like I can.
With the fury of my recitations. But who?
Yeah, some good bits here.
Oh, somewhere.
From where we carried on, the move up into his upper chest voice. I don't know if I was expecting that or not. One of my favorite parts from the Oogie Boogie song, please do check that out if you haven't already. That was one of my favorite voice play performances I've seen to date. We saw some of this.
You ain't going nowhere.
And then a bit later on, I loved that bit. I thought it was great. Quite unexpected as well. That was one of my earlier voice play reactions. So Geoff has now played two people from this film, and we kind of got something similar.
No animal nor man can scream like I can.
Huge range, all in his chest voice as well, pretty much, which is remarkable.
Inside of these bones, an emptiness began to grow.
Extremely simple piano accompaniment here, which I'm sure you'll agree in a kind of nonsensical way, it really increases the intensity. What it's doing is it's maintaining this almost like a waltz type rhythm. Jump, bum, bum, jump, bud, jump, bud. And we just have that, no other instrumentation doing runs or anything. So what we kind of more forced to focus on, Geoff's lamenting at this point, and it is very melodic.
And to grow.
There's
Especially considering how much kind of low speaking we've been having. There he changes octaves. Again, another surprise. We've gone up, straight back down.
something out there far from my home.
He's standing up. It's more theatrical, no longer sitting down. We've also got more instrumentation coming in. We've got the strings and the harmony is becoming especially peculiar for this bit. Increasing intensity kind of in a different way. Personally, it's more from, how do I explain, perhaps from an emotional side of things, because this peculiar harmony, I guess subconsciously, makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Not in a negative way, I hope you know what I mean here. Also, if we listen to what the instruments in the background are doing, the piano is this arpeggiated figure, and then the strings, they're swelling.
Something out there far from my home.
That's not a comforting style of music. What does the original do here?
Something out there far from my home.
It creates intensity through a different rhythmic device. Instead of this swelling and arpeggiated figures, we have the strings playing this constant energetic drive. From what I've seen so far, this cover by Geoff, a great example of a cover song that encapsulates the same overall feeling of a piece of music whilst making changes which, when you actually think about them, seem quite drastic and quite obvious, but don't change the overall feel too much. I think that's a real skill when it comes to arranging. So yeah, at the end of this phrase, he drops down, down, and what do we get to contrast that in the piano?
I've never known.
what a good choice of place to reintroduce this tinkling that we heard at the beginning. The next section, still very simple in terms of what we're hearing. Simple, by the way, does not equal easy or lazy. It's a stylistic choice to keep things simple. But we'll notice how much more energy there is here through the rhythms of everything.
Master of fright and a demon of light, and I'll scare you right out.
Got clicks as well for a bit of a beat. I do think clicks are quite catchy. They kind of make you want to just click along. We then get some strings come in, and I guess you'll call it a jump scare.
Out of your pants to a guy.
That did actually kind of scare me. I'm not even joking. We've got the pizzicato strings coming in. He then creates this echoey reverb layered effect on his voice, probably recorded the same line a few times and put them on top of each other.
And I'm known throughout England and France. Bonjour.
And just a cool little visual effect there.
To recite Shakespearean quotations.
No animal nor man.
And the preparation for this cool higher bit.
Shakespearean quotations.
Multiple voices. So what we've just had here, if we think of it in terms of how the multiple layers of voices are treated, we had the same line, but just a bit different to create a weird echoey effect, as we just spoke about. This time, it's again the same line, but now in different octaves. So not harmonizing with each other, but still different pitches, technically. And then we go into multiple voices, but now in just full harmony.
No animal nor man can scream like I can.
And of those three sections, the first one is low, the second one is low and higher, and then the third one is high and higher. Very nice gradual build up, not only in terms of pitch, but also in terms of layering complexity, if we can think of it like that. Okay, let's carry on. I think we went from his eyes starting to glow.
Citations, but who here would ever understand that the Pumpkin King with the skeleton grin would tire of his crown? If they only understood, he'd give it all up if he only could. Oh, there's an empty place in my bones that calls out for something unknown. The fame and praise come year after year, does nothing for these empty
Oh, what an eerie ending. With that kind of organ type sound, almost like a broken machine or something. I like Zero as well, the little dog here who's been very cleverly added in, floating around. Well, I enjoyed that. I really didn't know what to expect based on the two previous covers I've seen him do. I really liked the arrangement, similar but different to the original song. Great aesthetic, of course, to kind of enhance everything that we're hearing. And I think some of the musical choices in terms of the arrangement that he made were great. Let's go over just a few final things before wrapping up. I guess if I had to make one main point for this last section, it would be the coming together of ideas or themes that we've heard previously. Earlier, I was speaking about the swelling effect that came in and then stopped and then came in again. Now it comes in, but it's a bit more constant, so it doesn't seem quite as intense. Maybe jarring if you find it jarring.
Who here would ever understand that the
And Geoff very purposefully is making sure not to come in on the strong beats at the exact same time as them. He's implementing tempo rubato, which is kind of like rhythmic freedom, which in turn adds to the playfulness, the theatricality of it all, makes it seem a bit less strict and formal singing.
grin would tire of his crown? If they only understood, he'd give it all up if
Nice ooze again.
they only could.
Yeah, I like that bit. That's nice.
Oh, there's an empty place in my bones.
So now we have the strings coming in for some more constant playing. They are kind of at the forefront of the instrumentation, so the piano part can be a lot more rhythmic if we listen out for it. It's playing very quickly, but it's more subtle. It's not what we're focusing on. So overall, the effect is quite smooth, yet there's intrinsically a lot more rhythmic movement going on.
Calls out for something
Same with the beats that we're hearing. There's now some additional percussive noises in there. And how he just drops. The range he covers is ridiculous. And I think I've paused prematurely, but he jumps up now, doesn't he, as well?
something the fame and praise come year after year.
Very peculiar harmony. Well, not very peculiar, but quite peculiar harmony just before this, with more ooze coming in, a very, very rich, full, thick textural sound.
Fame and praise come year after year.
We're focusing on the ooze because they're the new addition, but we still have the strings that we had before and then the piano as well. So the layers, they're kind of building up and then they drop out.
Nothing for these empty tears.
And then that kind of jarring discordant chord at the end. And there are quite a lot of notes in there, but the main kind of notes that we hear. So we have your regular F sharp minor chord. That's in the bass, but kind of sliding between the notes. And then the violins at the top alternating. But then the nice juicy note in that last chord is this one. And up the octave. And it just creates this little clash. Yeah, I don't have too much more to say. Really, really enjoyed it. Very respectful to the original song in terms of everything, really, music and aesthetic, whilst also very, very clearly making it his own version, playing to his strengths, I think, not focusing too much on the instruments in the background, but more about the subtle theatricality and everything, and of course his voice, especially lower down. Yeah, lower than I could ever go. Thank you again for this request, and thank you as always to everyone for watching. Would appreciate a like and subscribe. Comment down below other songs by Geoff you'd like to see me do in the future, and if you enjoy these videos and are feeling generous this Halloween, you can buy me a coffee at the link down below, and I will use that to buy as many sweets as possible. I would say for the trick-or-treaters, but I love sweets. I'll probably eat them myself, but it's still for a good cause. And otherwise, you can, of course, go to the Patreon linked on the screen now for access to exclusive content not available on YouTube, and I will see you next time.